That's all good.
All right, here we go.
Hey guys, Steve here. Ponics. Today we're going to talk about
Growing with fishes. Growing with fishes.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast, episode 295. I'm your host Steve with Ponics, and this week we have a bunch of the different experts from BioAg. We have Eric Augerson, Alex Olsen, and Joshua Hedberg with us today. Thanks for joining us, guys. Hopefully I pronounced your names right there.
You got them right.
Yeah, you
having us.
We're excited to be here.
Love that intro.
Definitely excited to have these guys on. We've had Dr. Faust on a couple of times from BioAg, so we're excited to have some of the other experts from their team on the show. They're always a wonderful source of knowledge and have some of the best products out there, especially for organic certified stuff. So we're excited to have their team with us today. Before we get started, let me do a little bit of quick house cleaning here. If you guys are not already familiar with the show, we do also have a full-length aquaponic cannabis class. You can find it at apmjclass.com. We actually have a full revamp of the pest control section of the class, and we're releasing the pest control section of the class as a separate course here in the near future. So be looking for that if you're looking, just a general aquaponics practitioner or living soil practitioner that wants to have a much better rounded understanding of their pest management and what's really going on in a more regenerative type pest management plan on a commercial farm. We also have the Supernatural Conference coming up at the end of July. Be sure to check them out at organiccultivators.net if you're interested in joining us for that. We have a wonderful weekend at the end of July with Wendy Kornberg, Chris Trump, myself, Ben Acadia, Dan Kittredge, Patrick King, Kevin Jodry, Wolf Siegel, a whole bunch of Susan Wainwright Evans, Jana Beckerman, and a whole bunch of other wonderful people teaching a wide variety of organic cultivation methodologies. So we're super excited on that. And then we also have the Myceliate, the festival. I'll also be speaking up there in Washington on August 19th through 21st.
Oh, very cool.
Definitely give that.
Where in Washington is that?
It's in Wilkinson.
Cool. We're not too far from that, so that might be doable.
That's cool. I love permaculture, man. I have my permaculture certificate. Permaculture is awesome.
We have an incredible lineup. We have Cass Posey from Cognitive Function, Chris Trump, Justin Powers from Future 4200. We have Matt Powers, Catherine Seidman, myself, Molly from Molly's Bottle Shop, and a whole bunch of wonderful people from the regenerative side of things up there. So that'll be a really great festival as well.
That's cool.
Very cool.
I looked at the one you guys are doing in California or whatever. There was wine and weed and rafting and stuff, I thought, right?
We had a season on last episode with the Emerald Triangle Revealed tour. So you guys.
Yeah, no, that would look super cool. I love wine, and so I was like, that's perfect. And rafting, not so much, but wine, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to drink wine before rafting. It spells disaster.
Yeah.
Well, these gentlemen are from a wonderful company called BioAg, if you guys are not already familiar with them. We do have their website up here, and they create a wide range of different types of products that are highly beneficial. If you aren't familiar with their products, they really are some of the best ones out there. I've been using Full Power for a very long time. Cyto Plus as well in aquaponics and living soil I've been using for a very long time, over 6 years. And very excited to have these guys on the show today. You guys can also find them over on Instagram at _OG_BioAg if you're listening in the audio format. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to come on today. So you guys want to introduce yourselves kind of one at a time so people can get to know your team? And then also real quick before we do that, thanks for joining us, Wes Engine.
I think he's gone, maybe.
We'll get him in a bit.
Cool.
No, that was Eric. Anyways, so do you guys want to introduce yourselves? So I guess we'll start off with Eric.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Eric. I am the sales and development director.
Baby crying.
BioAg. Are we good?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm basically the sales and market development director. Before that, I was the field research manager. And my background is in organic ag. So specifically, I'm a physiologist, so I study plant growth and how to grow agricultural crops from a physiological, which includes IPM, fertility, kind of the whole shebang. And then I've been with BioAg for about 2 years now. Met Dr. Faust through just looking into the regenerative agriculture, humic acids, fulvic acids, and kind of decided I wanted to join BioAg and link up with a similar thinking group. And yeah, and so I've been doing that, and I'm really enjoying it and happy to be here. And yeah, and so and my background with cannabis, I've never done aquaponics. I've been interested in it, but mostly indoor soil production. I haven't done the hydro really. That's more Josh's expertise. But yeah, but always been growing cannabis at home, medically, recreationally, and just always thought ag and cannabis were very similar because they're it's growing plants. So yeah, and then Alex or Josh, go ahead.
Alex?
John, okay, I'll go. So I didn't expect a long intro. Thanks, Eric. No, I'm just kidding. So, no, I'm just giving you shit, man. So I do the product registration for BioAg. So all the Omri stuff, except for the original stuff like Full Power, Full Humics, I got registered. And then I started helping Josh and Eric with some of the cannabis sales and some of the research. But recently, I've been helping Josh out more with the cannabis stuff. And also I do turf in small farms. But my main interest, I went to school for horticulture. That's where Eric and I met, is regenerative ag, and so the first reason I got into cannabis was I started growing, and then I was kind of, being a hippie and talking to my plants, and they were like, we don't want these salts, man. And so I got into the PFA, the Probiotic Farmers Alliance on Facebook years and years ago. And that kind of stirred my interest in the whole regenerative cannabis thing. And then from there, I was like, well, I don't know what I want to do for school. And I was like, I fucking love weed and I want to learn how to grow better, because I was failing over and over again. And so I went to school, and that kind of stirred my love for other stuff, but the regenerative part has always been there. So coming on this podcast is really cool, and seeing what you do is really cool, because I want to merge, or not want to, but like I love the merging of regenerative stuff and cannabis and growing food. I love insects too, and so that's a big interest of mine. And yeah, and so that's kind of my background. I'm not super duper like knowledgeable at practical growing weed because I've only had my own home gardens and stuff. But I do love the science, and I do love just regenerative stuff. So yeah, that's kind of my background.
Gotcha.
All right. My name's Josh Hedberg. I was the first person to sell BioAg products in a hydroponic store. I've been friends with Dr. Faust for about 17 years, 18 years. He was a customer of mine at my store, the Indoor Garden Center in Salem, Oregon. And I had actually ordered some fulvic acid from a company in Canada, and it showed up bad. And then the Department of Ag told me I could not sell it. So I had it stuck in the back, and I was complaining about that one afternoon while Bob was in the store. And he said, "Hey man, I sell that to farmers in 50-gallon drums." I said, "Hey man, throw some quarts and gallons together and I'll start selling it for you." That was in like 2006. I've been selling it ever since. In fact, my store is gone and I still sell it. But
Good product survives the store.
Oh, absolutely.
And in addition to that, Josh is probably the greatest pot farmer I've ever met. and any of us have ever met, and pretty much anyone we've ever met's ever met. So, and we're
Real
in the
good
weed.
medicine.
I've been growing medical marijuana for about 16 years, 17 years, about that same amount of time. And I've been growing marijuana since I was 17. I'm 42. I was just very lucky to meet some very smart people at a very young age, and they were able to teach me some very practical techniques that I've been able to apply to lots of different gardening techniques throughout my life, starting with hydro, and then for the last mostly 10 years has been strictly organic living soils. But at BioAg, I'm the technical service manager. So I'm the one that helps people figure where that stuff fits in their hydroponic garden. And I help with cannabis sales and the R&D as well. But it just depends on what's going on is where I'm going at these days. Lately, you'll find me doing a lot of vendor days and counter days at stores, giving out samples and talk to people about BioAg stuff. In fact, a lot of times I find Alex or Eric with me.
Yeah.
They cut you off there. Go ahead.
Oh,
We do it for the people.
We also have
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Wes Engine with us today. Thanks for joining us, Wes.
Big up Poten, big up Josh, big up Alex. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everyone's living their best.
Wes, how's it going, man?
Awesome, man. Thanks for asking.
I like the fish.
Yeah, dope fish in the background.
Yeah.
They're big.
Yeah, man.
So tell us a little bit about, you guys have and actually we'll start off with this one because we were talking a little bit about before the show. You guys have a bunch of different awesome silica products. And so when we were looking at aquaponics back when I worked at the aquaponics stores, there was no like, hey, this nutrient should be in this range parts per million and this nutrient should be in this range. We had to spend months and months and months and months and years figuring that out. One of the things that we realized is we did a whole thing around flavonoids and trying to figure out why tomatoes tasted differently in the aquaponics versus the soil. So we did tissue sampling of the plants and of the tomatoes, and we found that chloride and silica were the two nutrients that were below norm, what the soil control was. So we started messing with both of those. And we found with the silica, there seemed to be a pretty good cutoff around 55, 60 parts per million, where it had an immediate huge difference once you hit that above that threshold for reducing powdery mildew, reducing bolting in lettuce, reducing frost. Even when we had really cold nights, it seems to improve frost resistance. It really does make a huge difference in plants' overall defense system, particularly with molds, but also with things like heat stress and cold stress, which was even more surprising because you wouldn't think that like this nutrient that people generally don't take as seriously as the other ones would have that much of an extreme effect. I know a lot of people listen to the show also have lettuce farms and then grow a lot of lettuce. Well, the summertime is coming. You know, bolting is often an issue for a lot of these aquaponic and hydroponic lettuce producers. And silica really does make a big difference in reducing that bolting. I'd love to have you guys talk about that because I know you guys have an awesome new silica product that Dr. Faust had touched on a little bit last time he was on the show, but you guys actually have, I think, fully out to market now.
Yeah, I'd love to go first on this a little bit because I did a talk recently for one of my old teachers, and I ended up looking into a silica paper, and it talked about everything you just listed. And you know, I was under the understanding, okay, well, it makes sense. Silica coating the leaf would keep powdery mildew and stuff, but it actually goes deeper into the plant, like with helping the plant's SAR response, which is its immune response. And so, and it goes deep into the metabolic processes in the plant. And so it's crazy that you found that, you know, on your own and saw all those benefits on your own. And now just in the past, I think 10 years, they're like, this paper is like, okay, yeah, we're seeing like SI, like helping the plant all across the board with drought, heavy metal toxicity, you know, too much water, not enough water, you know. And so it's just really interesting. And what's also really cool is our Bio Super Sil is a synthetic amorphous silica. which is different from a monosilicic acid, and it's complex with our fulvic acid. And so that's what I wanted to say about that. I know Josh and Eric all both have their own takes on this too, because like this is one of our really exciting, and it's OMRI listed too, which is something kind of new in the silicon world.
You want me to go? I did a lot of the R&D with BioSupersil this last summer, and we had some amazing results just with some simple foliar sprays throughout the season. I want to say we only got like between 6 or 8 down for the entire season, and the difference that we saw was amazing. The reduction in botrytis, the reduction in powdery mildew was more than noticeable, and it was more than just the season. We also the first sample I ever got of BioSupersil, I called my friend at 45th Parallel, and I said, we had a weekend coming up. We were expecting the temperature to get up to 117 degrees. So I said, hey, man, will you try this new silica for me? Spray one plant out in your garden and let me know what happens. Well, something got confused between him and the actual guy who did the spray. So they didn't spray one plant. They sprayed 100 plants. And I hadn't used the product yet, so it kind of gave me a heart attack. I didn't know what was going to happen. So I said, all right, we'll just cross our fingers and we'll see what happens on Monday. So I called them on Monday, and all 100 plants that got sprayed, instead of wilting under the 117-degree heat, they actually grew like 8 or 10 inches and were able to turn all that heat into energy. Everyone else lost sights, dropped leaves, wilted, because, no one in Oregon uses shade cloth. And if you don't have shade cloth and it's more than 100 degrees, there's nothing that's going to help you really. I haven't seen anything, and this is the first time I've ever seen something like that happen. And, I've seen good results with silica before, but nothing that profound, and with some of the varieties of that they grow outside, they grow so large that botrytis is just a regular thing, and that year when they applied the BioSupersil as a foliar spray, with some varieties, it was down up to 70%. That was more than a little bit difference than years past. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this next year and getting that data to compare to the years past.
Yeah. My thing with the BioSupersil specifically that's really cool about it is basically the reason that so silicon's unique because you got to think of it both as a element. So you can think of it as a traditional plant nutrient. So it feeds the plant. It gives it what it needs for cell development, for structure, for all that stuff, for the metabolic stuff like Alex was talking about, the SAR, elicitation, all that kind of stuff. But the other thing is it is also a biostimulant, and that's kind of how it fits into the BioAg portfolio. Is we are a biostimulant company. We focus on products that are from nature or they're natural, and they promote benefits in addition to just a nutritional content. It promotes, it improves growth, improves the uptake of nutrients, and improves stimulation. And that's kind of, so some of the things you see with silica are just from a nutritional standpoint, but then the things like you're talking about with the abiotic stress resistance, with the, the preventing of the bolting, the kind of that's almost like, that's where it's in that biostimulant classification. And so when you're using it as that, you're using it as biostimulant versus when you're just using it in a solution to provide, structural elements to the plant, then it's just for a fertilizer. So I think that's kind of the main things. You got to think of them as biostimulants. And I think people up until now haven't gotten that with silica.
There was one other thing that we noticed too, is we were getting up to 7 days longer shelf life in the fridge on a lot of the leafy greens as well. I forgot to mention that as well, is that it does improve shelf life. And crispness too. They don't get as wilty as fast.
Yeah. Something I wanted to add about the BioSupersil is that it being an amorphous silica means that it's not a crystalline structure, and so it's a lot more safe on like plants, and I would assume for like aquaponic systems, because I imagine if you're putting in like monosilicic acid or like the crystals and stuff, then it's a lot more rough on a system. But the BioSupersil is unique in that it's a synthetic amorphous silica, and so I just wanted to add that part in too about the safety of it.
Well, not only that, but it's a much better one for aquaponics. You know, some of the other silica products that are on the market are like a fine powdered grit, and that can end up in the fish gills and cause problems and actually be detrimental to fish health. Whereas this is a liquid solution that's much better for the overall system health.
Yeah.
Also, the pH on it is not it's right there around neutral. It does not have an extreme pH, either low or high. So that makes it very unique in the silica world, in that you don't have to worry about worrying about it affecting your pH one way or the other in an extreme fashion. Of all the silicas I've used, and I've used a ton of them out there on the market, I have never found one that's as gentle or easy to use as BioSupersil. One of the things we did some summers ago is we just took a bunch of plants and put them in the greenhouse and sprayed them until we could, see what damaged them. We did that with a bunch of different BioAg products. We only got to damaging plants when we got to almost a 50-50 solution of concentrate to water, which no one should do, but, you can use 3-4 times what we recommend and you still shouldn't have an issue, but, that's just wasting it. You can use much less than that. It just depends on how often you're applying and how you're applying, whether it's through a foliar spray, which we found most effective, or through the root zone in a living organic soil. We actually, during the very first R&D that we had, we almost shelved the product because all the tests we were doing were in soilless mix with chemicals. And we were watering it on and we weren't seeing any uptake through our sap tests. And we're like, what's going on here? Nothing's happening. And then over a weekend, we do a foliar spray on one of my mother plants and come back and check it. And it grew 1.5 feet while we were gone. We're like, okay, we're applying it wrong. It's a foliar spray. And then we had another gentleman who was applying it. I believe it was to nursery plants at a very low dosage with one of those fancy bacillus tinctures where it's got like 15 different bacterias and mycorrhizae and things in it, and they put it in large scale ag just to cover all their bases with all that stuff. But something in there was making the silica uptake in that environment, and they saw great results, and they're continuing on using it in that large scale ag. I didn't think it would have much of a difference until I gave some to a friend of mine who had a no-till garden, and he's been watering on his no-till garden for over a year now, and he loves it. It helps him with his salt buildup. His plants seem way sturdier and stronger when he transplants them into the bed. But the big thing is he doesn't have the salt buildup and the high parts per million runoffs that he was having before. Now that he's watering with that on a regular basis.
The main thing is we've seen just like through the root system, it works better when applied in a biological system. So for the aquaponics, that makes a lot of sense because that essentially is a very biological system, I'm assuming.
We got
Plus you have diatoms and all kinds of other things in there in the aquatic zone that are going to use the silica to create their own tissue. So
you got really quiet there.
Oh, I was going to say you also have diatoms and other things that are going to utilize silica for their own tissue and building their own cells and the microbial level. So, yeah,
we got a question from chat about human health with the amorphous silica. So that's the thing that I was saying was that it's by theory. In theory, it's more safe that because it's it's amorphous. But we can't make any substantial claims about, and you should never ever ingest stuff you're using as a plant food because it's not tested for human safety. But that's the theory with it being amorphous, that it's supposedly not as detrimental to human or any other life because it's not crystalline structure. So that's as much as I can really say without, because it's not meant for humans, but it's supposed to be more safe,
it's safer to work with, but as far as consumption, no one's done that. Not recommended.
It's not intended for human consumption.
Yeah, correct. And in our opinion, I think in all of our opinions, I'm speaking for myself, but I think for BioAg in general, you should just always err on the side of caution when dealing with any product. Wear eye protection, wear gloves, just be safe. Don't be treat it like you would treat bleach. Just be safe. Just
respect your ingredients.
Yeah. Even if it's organic, which our stuff is pretty much our whole line except for one product, the Ion 14. is right now it's OMRI listed, so it's organic and it's naturally based, and it's
Well, Cytoplus is on its way too. It's in the
Cytoplus isn't yet.
but it's going to be, yeah.
Yeah, and it's got organic in it. So.
Chemicals are dangerous in their own fashion, but organic are their own kind of dangerous, and they need to be respected all the same.
But no, it's safe like to use. It's just, we always recommend wearing gloves and eye protection.
Gloves, eye protection,
standard.
You're mixing soil, wear some sort of respirator.
You don't want to breathe in that dust
but in theory, amorphous silica is less dangerous than non-amorphous silica.
And is far less phototoxic and is far more friendlier for plant use. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Abraham's
like,
I'm not gonna use it.
Also, to add in there for bud growing, and Josh is more of is the expert, but I would say just not applying anything on something that's budding. When it's flowering, it's like, because it takes up everything, and even with something safe, it's like you still don't want to be smoking, anything extra that you don't need to.
Absolutely. One of the issues that I've noticed with a lot of commercial flower these days is the overuse of silica in flower. By the time you hit your 3rd week of flower, you've accumulated enough silica to get you through an 8-week cycle, to a 9-week cycle without needing to add more. Using it after that point is, it helps prevention, but it's absolutely detrimental to your burn, and how your flower tastes at the end. Everyone's had those flowers from the dispensary that are too dense. They look beautiful. They taste like crap. It's too much fertilizer, too much silica, not flushed enough. This
is my
is
least favorite weed.
This is the unfortunate future of commercial marijuana, because it's the cheapest way to, or perceived to be the cheapest way of doing it. But I think that it is not.
Yeah. Soil for the win, baby.
Or aquaponics, guys.
Yeah.
Aquaponics. Well, aquaponics. To me,
living
aquaponics
systems, living ecological systems.
It's a complete closed system. Like, I don't like if when I start growing and I got the thing, I'm gonna try aquaponics because that's like so cool. I love animals and I love plants, so why not merge the two?
Well, speaking of which, you guys want to talk about full power? It's another one that we often recommend for use in aquaponics.
Yeah. I'll follow the trend and I'll go first on this one. I'll be real short. It's our OG thing, our OG product that most people know us by. But fulvic acids are, to me, I like to just say it's like concentrated compost, because it's a carbon. It's a really reactive molecule, and it's an amazing foliar spray just by itself. And when I used it for the first time, I used it in some cocoa coir, and usually cocoa coir stays really like just kind of gritty and stuff. When I used just full power and water, it had become more friable. Like, it kind of became a crunchier soil, not soil. It was more like soil than I'd ever seen cocoa coir before. And so to me, I was like, okay, this stuff's really cool, and because everybody's skeptical when it comes to biostimulants, and I was too, especially just graduating. But that was my personal experience. Where I was like, okay, this stuff's really cool.
Yeah, some of my first experiences using full power was mixing it with different foliar sprays. In fact, one afternoon, the little old ladies from the Orchid Society showed up and ordered a case of something called Protec, which I had never heard of. And it was a silica supplement from a company called Dynagrow. And at that point, my store had been open for, I think, 5 years, and I'd never heard of silica before. I'd never used it. This is like 2003, I think, or 2004. And or no, it was later than that, because it was after I got BioAg, so maybe 2007. But either way, I I took a bottle home just to try it, because I ordered some for these little old ladies and put it on the shelf. It was relatively cheap, $12, and I mixed it with some full power and sprayed my plants. And I was blown away at what I saw. I had to, I saw an instant response. You come back 15 minutes later after you dry to adjust your lights again, and all of a sudden the plants are all standing up, and the light, everything's at a 45-degree angle, and and across the board. It didn't matter what kind of variety it was. I've always had multiple varieties in my garden. Mostly sativas, but indicas as well. But I'm more of a sativa gardener, and because of that, foliar sprays are usually kind of a no-no. They're very easy to burn with, and that's why I've loved using full power as a foliar spray with seaweed and alfalfa teas, compost teas. I found that just about every system I've used, even with hydroponics, I'm able to reduce the amount of salt fertilizer I'm using, and increase the amount of organic matter using humic acid, fulvic acid, different types of seaweed, and different types of compost teas, and able to get much closer to an organic product without using as much salt, but still having a consistent yield with the product. But it's just that fine balance between I think you can do just as good with a living soil and the right size containers and the right amount of plants per light with a living soil, be it in a bed, preferably a bed, or containers. It just depends on how you're cycling your plants and how you like to grow. But I've seen amazing yields, just as good as any hydroponic system in living soil and living beds. The idea that you can't get it with that you have to have mineral salts is absolutely incorrect.
No, so I see we have a question from the Flora Nugs, and we'll get to that. I saw what you're saying. You're curious about the individual products, the powders. But I'm just gonna go through. I'll just go through what the full power is real quick. So what the full power is basically, it is our own biologically extracted fulvic acid. And so what that is there's two things in soil and in compost that have the most biological activity, and those are humic substances. And so that's made up of humic acid and fulvic acid. So fulvic acid is just the smallest fraction of those humic substances, and it's super, super active because of the amount of chemical groups that are in there. So there's a bunch of carboxyl groups and a bunch of hydroxyl or hydrogen groups, and it basically makes it a great chelator complexer product, which just basically means that it helps bind with fertilizers and bind with other products to help drive them into the plant. And it does that in an organic way, similar to the way that soil does that for fertilizers and for nutrients. So like similar in an organic system, you need these humic acids, you need other things. So humic acid aren't the only ones, but they're a great one. And they just kind of help you do that. And so we have our own full power. We use rainwater, which is really cool. So it's more sustainable, which is why we're based here in Oregon. And then it's a organic biological extraction. So we don't use any harsh chemicals, because that's how a lot of people extract fulvic acids. So they use citric acid and potassium and other products to help extract that
Hydroxide.
And hydroxides. And we don't use any of that in the full power. It takes time and it takes biology, but that's why it's such a cool thing. And then also our source is really great, but there are a bunch of great sources of humic and fulvics, but full powers, that's it. Flora says it's magic in a bottle. So that's great. Yeah, somebody said it was sunshine in a bottle because it's golden in color, which is really cool. So anyways, so Flora, you were asking what are the individual powders that you saw? So those were all the amino powders.
Before we get to those, I wanted to mention also, if you guys are having like younger plants or clones that are not doing quite as hot or anything, this is really good to put in with your you spray onto your injured plants or clones, or if you even put a little bit in your seed soaks, it does a really good for helping boost plant vigor. Do you want to talk about that for a second too?
Yeah, that was one thing, Eric, that I wanted to add there too, is in the process of the uptake, as it's uptaking, one of the awesome byproducts of that is it makes larger, ropier roots and thicker stalks. So the earlier you can start incorporating fulvic acid in with your plants after they have roots, the bigger you're going to build those stalks and roots, from the get-go. I actually use more in my veg and early flowering than I do at any other time. Just because, especially at those transplanting times, I'm using a lot of fulvic acid, almost at full strength, with my living soil, which I, normally, I'm at half strength, more often than full strength all the time. But I see a dramatic difference in the size of stalks that I get. And whenever I get big stalks, I get big yields with my organic soil.
Yeah, we've shown too, like with what you were saying with the seeds. So you can use it straight with water from the beginning as a seed soak, and it will have a beneficial effect on your stem growth. So it's positive use all the way through. What you're talking about with the sick plants, that's the biostimulant, the abiotic stress thing, just helping. So it's not really, it's you can't think of it as a cure because it's not curing any issue with the plant. What it's doing is it's helping the plant just function more efficiently, and so that the plant can help. It's like you got to take your vitamins and your medicines to help if you're sick, to help yourself get better, but it's not curing your issues. It's just helping you
deal with the stress.
Yeah, it helps you with the stress, and that's the goal.
Okay, do you want to talk to us about the nitro? We'll start off with the nitro amino.
That is Eric.
I think is the one that he was mentioning first.
Yeah, the amino acids, man, that is it's an amazing foliar spray. It's a 1400, and so it's derived from soy protein, but it's an instantly available nitrogen. But it's a nitrogen derived from amino acids, and so it works kind of more efficient. And I'll let Eric get into that more because he's really good at explaining that. But like this stuff, like from an agriculture standpoint, from a cannabis standpoint, like it is organic, instantly available nitrogen, and it also acts as does other biostimulant properties, and it's just an amazing foliar spray. Like I'm really excited about this, but I'll let Eric. Yeah, Eric has a lot of knowledge about this.
Yeah, Eric's the guy when it comes to the amino acids. I'll just say, as far as I've owning a store for many years and running it for 18. I've used a lot of different amino acids. These are the most affordable, gentle, easy to use amino acids I've ever used. The nitrogen that's available and that's easy to use, that's organic, is hard to come by. And that this is, I find, to be a very rarity. And I love combining it or the cow amino with the bio super cells of foliar spray. That seems to work very, very well. But I'll let Eric take it away from here because he knows the science.
Yeah, no. So basically with the amino acids, what they are. So nitroamino is R1, but it's a combination of a bunch of different amino acids. And those are amino acids that are extracted from the soybean meal. And it goes through this process called hydrolysis, which is basically a high energy way that they it takes pressure and energy, and it basically breaks down these amino acids and the other structures within the plant into their amino acid basic forms. And so when you're applying this nitroamino, you're not just applying nitrogen, you're applying the individual aminos, which are like lysine and arginine and cysteine and proline. And these things do different things for the for plants, for plant growth and plant health. So the thing is, it's really cool. So it's kind of a new thing with the agricultural world too, is they don't really even know which ones do what specifically at what rates for amino acids for plant growth. They just know that they're required. So we know that, cysteine and proline and arginine are required for, let's say, I'm not 100% on this. I'm not an expert on the chemistry side, but basically what we know is that they have an effect on bud growth, or they have an effect on shoot growth, or they have an effect on root growth, and they're required for these processes. We just don't know how to stack them in different ratios to promote different things in the plant. And that's kind of the future of amino acids that we're trying to figure out, which is really exciting.
But you have the most famous case for lysine, with the Jurassic Park, if they had the lysine contingency.
Yep.
Keeping the dinosaurs controlled.
Oh yeah, nature finds a way. I remember that.
Yeah.
Anyways, I just thought that was funny. I wanted to mention that with that. But yeah,
That's-
it's definitely a different version. I've never seen a nitrogen product that's soy-based like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and the cool thing is it's from non-GMO soybeans. So the benefit from that is it's pretty much guaranteed that they're grown without glyphosate, because that's the thing we're trying to get away. Because there are soybean products out there that do have they can have traces of glyphosate if they're not from organic or non-GMO soybean. And so that's the nice thing about it. And that's how we get the OMRI certification. And just from an ag standpoint, it's a really, really great organic, available, cheap nitrogen. So if you're just going on that standpoint alone, that's great. But the benefits you see as foliar applications, that's the really cool thing. And then all of the other different aminos in addition to nitro-amino. So they're basically, so in the hydrolysis process, you can add other nutrients. So you can add, like, this is boromino. So you can add basically, so what we do is we add the boron, or we add the iron, or we add multi-amino it's a bunch of different micronutrients for plant growth, kind of similar to our TM7, but with amino acids. And what that does in the hydrolysis process, it really helps chelate and complex those micronutrients and macronutrients like calcium. But what that does is the end product is it's a super available organic micronutrient pack. And so that can be used either foliarly or through the drip system or through the roots. And you can use them at really low rates compared to commercial organic sulfate fertilizers. And so the actual rates of micronutrients you can actually use a lot less because they're a lot more available to the plant. And it's super cool. And that's it's a great way to kind of help spoon feed your plants for deficiencies. That's kind of how I'd like to describe that. And then the humics and fulvics and all that stuff's more about building a soil system that helps keep your plant rolling a long time. Because that's kind of how I see it, is these are kind of like the tools you can use to grow and fix problems and issues as they occur and promote a healthy crop. But then the goal is really to build a healthy environment and ecosystem that will grow, and that's the humics and fulvics and building the biology in the soils. And these things will also feed your biology, because there's the amino acids are what plants put out as exudates. So a lot of the times in the soil, plants will put out exudates through the roots, and those are used to break down micronutrients, and they're used to, feed the mycorrhizae, and they're used to feed, or not mycorrhizae, but feed the bacteria in the soil. And they're used to feed other things and attract beneficials to the plant. And so those exudates, a lot of those are like what makes that up is amino acids. So by using this, you're doing a similar thing. And by foliar feeding the plant amino acids, that's the benefit. Yeah. And the cool thing is it's like, we can go down the hole, but we need to put up a handout or a slide thing on our website that goes through the nitrogen cycle with the amino acids, because it's really unique too, because you save an energy step in the nitrogen cycle. So it takes energy for a plant to utilize nitrogen to make it into amino acids and turn it into basically plant metabolism energy. And so what you do is you basically provide the plant with these little amino acids. It skips a step, and that plant can better utilize all that energy. It's an energy saving process by providing them the raw amino acids instead of this like bound up form of nitrogen that they have to then process and break down and then turn into amino acids. And it's kind of, yeah, so in theory, that's what we think's going on with there. But all we know is you put it on the plants, and the plants, it's awesome. Like, it's pretty cool shit. And that's the consensus of most of the ag guys that we've given it to. They're like, oh yeah, that's pretty good shit. Like, that's pretty cool shit. Like, yeah.
Be a great vegetative foliar.
Pretty much magic.
Yeah.
And it's cheap, and it's very cheap, and that's the benefit too. And it comes as a powder. So when it comes to you, it's a hygroscopic powder. So it's 100% powderized product that can go completely into liquid. It's completely soluble into liquid. It is organic, so we don't recommend having it stored for over a week once you mix it with water. But you can either apply it dry to the soil, or you can just put it in liquid, foliar apply it, put it in your solution, mix it with other fertilizers. It's super compatible. We've had commercial guys apply it with their their pesticides and their large scale fertilizer applications. They'll throw, if they want to have a micronutrient, they'll put the multi-amino in with their, whatever their insecticide sprayers, whatever their fungicide is, and they're very compatible with most of the stuff out there. And it's, yeah.
You talk to us about
mine right here.
you guys want to talk to us about the boroamino and boron? A lot of the people don't have a good understanding of boron, and maybe educate some of our listeners on that, because it's certainly can be helpful, but if you overuse it, can be a hindrance.
Yeah, I've killed a lot of stuff with Solubor. That's for sure. That boron in general has got a big learning curve to it, and Oregon soil in general has got a boron deficiency. So it was one of the first micronutrients that we brought in because we're based in Oregon, and all the farmers need it here. Generally across the board for their native soil. But as far as applying it, it seems to be, again, a much, boron in general is one of the more dangerous elements to use. You always have to wear gloves when you're handling any boron, because it can be transdermal. It can go through your skin, because of metal. It's a heavy metal. So you got to be more careful with it than, let's say your calcium or your oyster shell or your insect frass or any of that stuff. You wear those gloves, wear that mask. That is a have to with all boron supplements. But this one I found to be very easy to apply, and it seems to be much more available as a foliar spray and through the root zone, whereas I've never been able to successfully apply any other boron supplement as a foliar spray without doing some serious damage. Even adding it to the soil, I found it to be quite difficult. But I've never had a problem with the boramino or the multi-amino, which has, I believe, boron in it.
Yeah. So the thing with boron is, so from a plant standpoint, what boron is really important for is its flower development and pistil development in flowers, which for cannabis production is really important, because that's the part that we're growing, is the flower and the pistils. And so it helps with your pistil actual, the ability for it to be pollinated, but in order to be pollinated, it needs to fully develop into a big, healthy, smokable pistil. The thing with it though is it is super, you have to use it in very, very, very low rates. And so the rates that we have the boramino set at, you should be safe. But we still say, it's not something you apply with every feed or every water. It's during your transition. It's during, once or twice during your veg, if you see a deficiency, or if your soil, if you're for some reason. And so we're big fans of both basically tissue testing and soil testing. And so if you see these deficiencies, that's where you should really throw in these kind of things like the boramino. But for the ag side, it's super important for crops like corn, apples, pears, wine grapes, blueberries, all the stuff we deal with. Anything that flowers and fruits requires boron. And so that's kind of, but cannabis too, it's a boron loving crop. But the thing is with it, if you use too much, it becomes toxic, and it's an important micronutrient. It's a micro.
A little bit of the time. One of the things that has plagued the cannabis industry for years is too much potassium, too much phosphorus. Using it as a bloom enhancer and bloom hardener. You can get the same effect with micronutrients used at the proper time. Using boramino, using TM7, using Cyto Plus. But my favorite is the multi-amino. Using that at the proper times throughout flower can replace many different types of bloom boosters that will give you size. But there is no biological free ride. You use that potassium and phosphorus, you're going to taste it. You're going to see it in your burn. You're going to see it in your flavor. And if you can replace that with small amounts of micronutrients and get the same frosty effect, that's what you want. And you're using less to get more, and you're using a cheaper product. Most of those bloom boosters are insultingly overpriced.
Yeah. One thing that you told me that was super awesome, that made me feel good about these products, was just that they are so efficient and fast that they also clean up really fast. So they're in and out of the system really fast.
Yes.
And so that was something you told me, like you were saying with the nitramine specifically, that you could run it further and not have that issue you get with a lot of the nitrogens.
Oh, absolutely. I've overused even alfalfa meal and insect frass at the latter part of bloom, because I'm trying to keep my plants from yellowing up, especially those really heavy feeders. Those are the guys really hard. It's really hard to keep them happy at the end of a flower cycle in a living soil, particularly in pots as opposed to a bed. Not everyone has the convenience of using a bed, and those, when you get that plant root bound, that's really when you need to supplement those big stuff that get absorbed really quick, like nitrogen and calcium and micronutrients. And products like multi-amino, calmino, and nitroamino give you products that you can either use them together, using less of all three, or using whichever one you think specifically is going to help you at that time at very low amounts. But you're not going to taste it at the end of your flower cycle like you would if you're using like a traditional nitrogen, specifically, blood meal, feather meal, any of those fish, crab. If you use that in your last 5 weeks of any flower cycle, you're going to taste that, and you're going to see that in your burn. If you use mild amounts of the nitroamino or the calmino, particularly my favorite, the calmino or the multi-amino, you will not taste that at the end. You'll just get a much more green plant to the end of your cycle, but you'll still get that nice fade at the end. You won't have that army green hydroponic look that guarantees you're gonna, it's a big pretty plant, but it's gonna taste like, that fertilizer smells, and God knows you don't want it to taste like organic fertilizer smells.
No, my thing with that is I think somebody told me this, and a good way to describe that is it's fertilizer digestibility, like how fast the plant can digest that fertilizer. And, if you think of it that way, it's kind of a cow nutrition thing, because that's how they think of cattle feed. It's how digestible is that versus how much nutrients in it is, how digestible are those nutrients. And it's, if we want something that the plant can absorb, utilize, and, and not take a lot of time to process to then finish its flowering process.
Absolutely. And that stuff is very readily available, but at the same time, very gentle. And that is what makes it so unique. And, the consistency of it's like coffee creamer, so like you said, it breaks down into water super easy, and it leaves very, very little residue. So it'll go through a sprayer very easily. It'll go through a backpack sprayer. It'll go through a hydro system. It'll go through a drip system. And you don't have to go through a whole lot of straining or anything like that, like you do with, a lot of humate products. They're pretty thick and kind of nasty, but you don't get those problems with the powdered aminos, especially, they keep for a long time as a powder. You don't have to worry about shelf life, which is an issue with, I found, with all liquid amino acid products.
Yeah. Our thing with it too is we could have made them into a liquid amino acid, because there are a lot of products out there that are liquid, but we chose to keep them as a powder, because what we're thinking a lot of companies are doing with that, like, not to throw them under the bus, but they're using dry amino acids and they're making these liquid products and selling bottles with water added, which is different than the full power. We don't add water, we use water to make it. It's kind of a different, so a lot of people will buy products, add water, sell products. We don't. We manufacture amino acids, we manufacture liquid fulvic acids, and that's and dry humic products, but it's not, we don't blend stuff, or we make stuff. And we want to save the grower money, because that, in the end, sending a dry product in a small bag versus sending them a bottle of water, it saves shipping cost, it saves the grower money. They can mix it. We provide the mixing instructions. But so a lot of people are like, oh, I don't use it. This is different. I'm used to the liquid amino. It's like, oh no, that they make those from these.
Yeah, there's a lot of $300 a gallon amino acids out there that work. Don't get me wrong, they work fantastic. I got no problem with how they work. What I'm insulted by is their price. Why is it $350 for a 5-liter jug of a wonderful product that I like to use, when it could be completely affordable and something that everybody could use? But at that price, only a guy who's selling cannabis and doing very good at it can afford to use a product like that. When that should be available to every garden. It should be available to every ag garden. This is a big tool in the toolbox that can help a lot of people use a lot less chemical fertilizer.
Yeah. I want to answer. I'm assuming we'll let Alex talk for a bit.
No. I already said what I wanted to about the aminos.
Yeah.
Cool. No, I just want to answer this one question that we missed.
Did you want to mention about the calmino?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we can. I want to answer. Buddy Kilowatt had a question about the Fulvic.
Yes.
He said, why is it such a high pour rate, the 20 mils per gallon? So we recommend for the full power, it's basically, I think the bottle's 15 to 30, but it might be 10 to 30, probably 10 to 30 mils per gallon. I'm pretty sure Alex should know this. He submits the labels.
Way to
but-
just, yeah, I think
We're
it's
under the bus.
30
No,
minutes.
no, but the reasoning with that is so it's a use timing thing too. So if you use it with every feed or every water, we recommend using the lower rate. And if you're using it, once a week or once in a compost tea or, more seldomly, the higher rate, because it does kind of build up over time in the soil the way it acts. So we with the Fulvic, you should have, we think lower rates more often is better than higher rates less often, but sometimes just ease of convenience. If you're doing your fertilizer batch once a week or doing your fertilizer once every 2 weeks, we get that. But you can use that lower rate, 5 mils even, if it's like an every feed kind of deal. And so, especially with the foliar, lower rates on the foliar are fine. Especially if you're tank mixing with other stuff, you can use it as kind of an additional booster.
When Bob was first coming out with BioAg products for the hydroponic market, for us, we went through a lot of different iterations of full power, and getting him down to 30 mils was quite a thing. Because if you read the original papers, all the original fulvic acids use a ridiculous amount per gallon to get the effect that you get with our fulvic acid at 30 mils per gallon. But that's because we use that very specific special method that doesn't use chemicals to extract. That's why if you see a fulvic acid and it's not golden in color, and if it's got, even if it is golden in color, if it's got an NPK value to it, that is not the same as what full power is. That is something very, very different. That cannot be used in the same way and will not give the same effect as the stuff that we sell. But you'll find that full power, especially in a hydroponic system, using it those lower doses is absolutely beneficial. I find with most deep water culture or bare root systems, I'm only using 5 or 10 mils per gallon the entire cycle. Whereas with my living soil, if I'm only watering 3 times a week, out of convenience, I'm either going to add 10 or 15 mils to my reservoir, or I'm just going to, when I get to the bottom of my reservoir, I'll throw in 30 mils per gallon once a week. Either way, it'll get you to the same place, whether you're using a little bit all the time or once in a go. We've just seen a lot more benefit, particularly with cannabis, by giving it a little bit all the time, giving it a little bit of a boost, a little bit there. And then when you do that compost tea, hit it hard with it. When you give it those extra boosts, those extra minerals, and you'll help break that stuff down, particularly if you've been top dressing or if you've been adding any more biomass with compost on the top of your soil or doing any cover crops. You'll see a great benefit in adding that in on a more regular basis.
My thing with it too is you've got to think about just what you're mixing it with too. If you're mixing it with a lot of fertilizer and a lot of organic input, you want it to do its chemical process with all of that. So you want to basically have enough full power in there, because it's all those carbon groups and all of those, chemical bonds will be made, and then it'll basically be spent and used up, and you'll run out of full power for the other stuff to be processed. But you still should cut down all of your stuff in general, because the fulvic, you can use as much as you want. It's not going to hurt your plants. You can go more the merrier. It's just more money, but it will have a benefit to a point. Then you won't see the benefit, but it won't harm your plants. The thing that'll happen though is that you can still get burns, but it's because your nutrition is then becoming so available that it harms. So you need to cut down your nutrition rate, but
less to get more.
But I use a lot of full
That's
power.
what we're all about. And if you're using full power with a humate and with an amino acid and with a silica, you can use less of everything combined. This is a package deal. And you can use less of whatever fertilizers you're using, be it in top dress, compost tea, or liquid food.
Steven, I had a question for you. How would you say fulvic acids or full power specifically fits into like an aquaponic system? What benefits does it provide in that kind of system?
So it definitely helps with overall plant vigor. It helps with also the You can use it foliarly or through the water in the system. There's no issues with the fish or anything like that. But it does just help with overall plant health. Nothing in particular that it comes to mind. Just faster growth, better vigor, and better nutrient uptake. A better response when we do, just like you were saying, when we do dose nutrients. If we add that as part of the blend, oftentimes we'll do a mineralization methodology with the fish waste. We'll add that directly to the mineralization tank to help feed the microbes and help make those minerals much more available in that mineralization process, and then feed it that way. So that's the other way that we use it. So we kind of use it all three different ways, depending on what it is. A lot of other people also like to add it because it does kind of darken the water. And if they're having algae issues and some of the other stuff, it does help kind of reduce some of those types of problems, as well as a happy side effect as well.
Huh. That's cool. That's
Very
interesting.
cool. So it's kind
Now,
of
that
like
was
a
something-
water conditioner. That's
Oh,
very
is that? Oh, yeah. You can use it for dechlorinating as well. I forgot about that.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's
Because it helps it drop out.
Yep.
Oh,
Absolutely. Yep.
Back in the day in the hydro world, there used to be a product called it was called water conditioner, and they charged $189 a gallon for it, and it was humic acid and maxicrop, and it worked fantastic. If you had crappy chlorinated water and you threw that in there, man, they loved it. But as soon as I figured that out, and I'm like, hey man, I got humic acid for $30 a gallon and maxicrop for $20. Why am I paying $189 for this from a guy in Portland?
So the thing with you were saying about you add it with the microbes, or you add it to the microbe tank to that thing that's because it's jam packed full of carbon. So the fulvic and the humics, they are a great carbon source, and I think that's why you see that if you see like a bloom in your microbe count, it's in the soil system. That was just an additional thing we didn't talk about. It's because it's so heavy with carbon. It's once that breaks down and all those bonds are made, there's a bunch of carbon to feed the microbes.
You guys also have, in my opinion, the best kelp product on the market. Do you want to touch on that with your Cyto Plus? We often recommend it for people because people really like to have it as a more natural kind of mineral supplement for some of the trace elements and things.
Cool. Yeah, Alex, do you want to do that one?
I mean, I could talk a bit about it, but I mean, I feel like Josh would be better to like.
Well, I'll start it off and then I'll pass it to Alex. When Bob first brought this to me, he was selling it to tomato farmers for an organic flower trigger. Yeah, and he sold it to me in small packages as a foliar spray. And I had great luck with it. I used it as a foliar spray, just ran it through a little coffee filter, and man, it was strongest foliar spray I'd ever used at a quarter of a teaspoon per gallon. I'd never quite seen anything quite like it. And then I got a book from a guy on compost teas. It really was about living soil. But I had like 5 or 8 different compost tea recipes in it, and it all called for all these different micronutrient rock powders and humic acid. And I'm reading all these rock powders, and I'm reading off the Cyto Plus. I'm like, why am I buying all these rock powders when it's literally everything in here is in this, and it's a quarter of a teaspoon per gallon. I don't have to buy 10 different boxes of things, so I'm using this. And I started throwing that in my compost teas, and really that's where I saw a dramatic difference. It seemed like every time in my living soil, when I applied it with my compost teas and then applied it within a week of transplanting, if I was in veg, I'd see an explosion of growth. If I was in bloom, I'd see an explosion of either frost development or flower development, depending on where I was at. I usually don't like to use it past my second week of flower. At that point, if I want micronutrients for that additional boost, I'll rather use the multi-amino. But for that 2 weeks before and 2 weeks in, unless I'm using like a different type of higher end liquid seaweed, that's cold pressed, that for some reason I think works better, I would much rather, I just use the Cyto Plus. I find it gives me exactly what I'm looking for as a bloom booster and as a additive to my compost teas for veg. And I don't have to nearly add as many or buy as many products, and it just works simply. But
yeah.
Alex. knows a little bit more about the science.
Oh, I mean, I think I always say that Josh and I have good synergy because he's got years and years of practical knowledge, and then I went to school to learn about this stuff, and so it's like I love to talk about it in that sense. But I mean, you really can't beat the knowledge of like having it done like by somebody who knows such good medicine.
Well, the best thing about working at BioAg is I'm finally learning how all this stuff actually works. I know it did something. I know why I did it, but I didn't know how it actually worked in the plant, and that's what these guys are teaching me.
And so for Cyto Plus is interesting to me because it's the classic biostimulant, right? So it has humic acid, and then within the humic acid we have our seaweed extract, and then we have micronutrients, and so it's just like a pack a punch of different of all of your classic biostimulants because of the kelp having the cytokinin response where that promotes growth, and then the 7.5% potassium, which is great for bloom. That's what flowers, any fruits need for building that fruit stuff. And so it's just a really good just overall biostimulant, and it's a classic. I'm excited because we're doing turf trials, and I asked the professor, I was like, hey man, I was like, out of all of our products, what would you think would make a good turf product? And he was like, well, this product has humic acid, which is already big in the turf world, micronutrients, which he kind of expects because it gets cut so often. It's like it's going to be needing more micronutrients than something that doesn't, like a perennial crop that doesn't get cut as much. And then the kelp. And so he was like, I think this would be something really interesting to try on even the putting green, and we're doing he's doing anthracnose trials. And that was he was most excited about Cyto Plus. And so I don't know, to me, it's like, okay, that's when you think of a biostimulant, that's kind of a good mixture to think of is our Cyto Plus, and it's a classic. So yeah, that's what I would say.
A lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah, a lot of bang for the buck.
I would argue it's our best home gardener, mom and pop product too, not just for the cannabis, but just for if you have something you want to give. If grandma's like, I want something for the garden or the roses, or, it's just a good basic, it's got your micronutrients, it's got kelp, it's got humic acid, it's going to benefit. And then all you have to do is add compost or add, a general all-purpose fertilizer, and you've got the full biostimulant package.
Something I wanted to say too, because Josh was mentioning about sometimes you don't need, because people add so much phosphorus and potassium, and he was saying sometimes you just need to add micronutrients to do what you need. And I think that kind of lines up with the law of minimums, where it's like if you have a barrel and you have all these slats, and it's like, well, your barrel of water can only get as full as your lowest slat. And so a lot of people, growing in an indoor environment, you're missing your micronutrients, especially when you get to the flower. So you're missing just one maybe thing, and it's hard to know because of how many different variables there are. But something like Cyto Plus is just a good overall, maybe you're missing this micronutrient, maybe you're missing a little carbon, or maybe you're missing a little bit of potassium, or something else that the kelp does. And so it helps kind of raise your lowest slat in your barrel, if that analogy makes sense.
Alex, I don't know if Stephen, if you can Google stuff or pull up stuff, or if one of you guys has a shareable. I'm on my phone, but it's called the Liebig's law of minimum.
Liebig's law of minimum. Yeah.
But it's basically, the whole concept is one of the nutrients, if it is lacking, causes all of the nutrients to not be able to be utilized by the plant. So you may have enough calcium, but because you don't have enough boron, the calcium is unavailable to the plant, or it's, unusable by the plant.
Yeah. Shout out to a PFA for teaching me that one a long time ago. Alan Atkinson from the PFA.
But no, there's a really cool image of a barrel, because it's like, that's what Alex is talking about, is the barrel, slats of the barrel. Yeah. If you just do images, it might pop up.
There it is.
Oh, yeah.
Right
the barrel.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you see whatever nutrients missing, the water falls out.
Get naked in the barrel.
Well, I mean, we have seen Bob and us once or twice. In the,
Full power barrel. Yep.
we have a lot of
Yeah.
full power hanging around, so we always joke about swimming in it. Yeah, no.
But yeah,
I'm
yeah.
curious about the Fulvics with the fish, though. We were talking about that, and because I know there are benefits for humics and Fulvics for livestock, and they use it for that in Europe, and they use it as a vet remedy in America. But I wonder if it has a benefit.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of research, especially around freshwater shrimp species. Macrobrilla rosenbergi and some of the other more commercial freshwater shrimp and crayfish. They've had quite a bit of research on using fulvic and humics for reducing fungal outbreaks and improving overall health and survivability. So,
That's very cool.
I know. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember. It might have been Dr. Ricosi that did some stuff, but I know. I think Dr. Faust also did some research with that as well.
No way.
Some people doing research on that.
Yeah, Bob's into the fish.
Oh,
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I don't know on the fish side. I would imagine there's at least some kind of aquaculture paper on humic and fulvics, probably more into the diet than it would be in the water column directly, but I'm sure there's something out there on that.
There will be a literature dive in the future.
Yeah,
Let's try to find out.
the only thing I sold to aquaponics farmers on a regular was full power. That would seem like the only thing in my shop that I would, it didn't matter if they said aquaponics, they were there for full power and usually some parts for plumbing. They didn't need anything else.
Yeah, I got to write that down. That's really cool.
Yeah, so I'll throw this up there, but there's quite a bit of papers on fulvic and humic acids and aquaculture.
That's very cool.
Whoa.
Yeah. Anyone that wants to really nerd out, scholar.google.com, and you can just run through a whole bunch of white papers. And if you don't understand a word, you can stop and make sure you Google it and understand what it is before you go back and read the rest of the paper. And if you're trying to self-teach yourself something, you aren't already aware of it. And then if you can't find a paper on here or it's paywalled, just go to Sci-Hub and view it for free rather than the paywall.
Nice.
Yeah,
So I will
that's
give myself
that
a
is
shout out.
Sorry,
I'm gonna give myself a shout out with the full power and the Fulvic, but we're gonna be publishing actually a paper on the Fulvic on hemp seed soaking. So that's the goal. And Alex helped with the actual research part of that, which is cool. But that's actually I'm stoked. Like,
Speak on that a little bit. That was your baby there, Eric.
Yep. Nope. So I'm getting a paper hopefully. So that'll be
that's
writing
cool.
the paper. Yeah. So we'll have
And
some.
this where?
It'll be in a hemp journal. I forget which one, but it's like there's a new hemp journal since the legalization of hemp.
Lay hemp.
Because it was all on CBD hemp seed. Because it's at Oregon State University, so we had to do it on hemp. So, but yeah, cool.
Do you want to also talk about? I didn't really realize you guys actually also have an Mycorrhizae product. I think that's pretty
Oh,
unique.
yeah.
Correct me if I'm
Yes,
wrong.
that's fortified with humic acid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
tell us
so-
about that and why that's a better choice than some of the other ones that are out there.
Well, I'll start first. So just give kind of a introduction to what endomycorrhizae is. And so it's fungus that forms a symbiotic relationship with plant roots. It can't live without the plant roots, so it can't be, completing its life cycle unless it actually attaches to a plant's roots. 95% of plants, I believe, have the ability to form some sort of endomycorrhizal symbiosis with fungus. And then it's actually rare. It's actually rare out in nature for a plant that can have this relationship to not have it. And it essentially looks like smaller roots, and it helps the plant grab onto more water, more nutrients. And like Eric was talking about, the plant gives out exudants to these fungus in exchange for water or for nutrients or for chemical signals saying what's going on around it. And so this is kind of a mix of a bunch of generalist species, I believe, and maybe a few specific ones. I know one of them at least is specific for cannabis. I think Eric can get more into that, but and so it forms those relationships and helps with abiotic stress and just overall plant health. And there's a lot of, like, if you go to Google Scholar, like Steven said, there's a lot of really interesting research out there about endomycorrhizal fungi.
Yeah, I can add one thing there too. One of the few plants that doesn't have a mycorrhizal relationship is kale. Not even mycorrhizae likes it. This is nature telling us something. That's a horrible vegetable, and you shouldn't eat it.
That's a hilarious joke.
But I found that out doing a display in my garden at my store. It was using mycorrhizae, and I called up my friend at Green Air Products, and I'm like, "Hey, man, I'm using mycorrhizae on this kale for the last 3 weeks, and the roots aren't doing anything." He's like, "Kale doesn't have a mycorrhizal relationship." I'm like, "There are plants that don't have a mycorrhizal relationship." He's like, "Yeah, they're rare, but you found one." Oh, great.
So there's two things with that. So there's actually a study by state of California on wild garlic mustard that was introduced to California, showing how not only do some brassicas not have endophytic mycorrhizae, but some of them actively kill them in the soil in order to outcompete other local plants. So they'll actually produce exudates that will specifically kill mycorrhizal fungi to basically kill off their neighbors so they could take over. So some of them are pretty gnarly. But at the same time, there was a different study last year where with the introduction of trichoderma for some brassica species with mycorrhizae actually allowed for the colonization of mycorrhizae, but only with the introduction of trichoderma.
Yeah, I actually had a friend of mine who his outdoor medical marijuana garden was in an old orchard field, and he kept on getting vexillium wilt in his plants that were in the ground, and we couldn't figure it out. And then we figured out that there are all these roots that were still left over with all these stumps. So he takes out all the stumps and he takes out all the roots, but the bad stuff's still in the ground. So we got this trichoderma inoculant from BioWorks called Root Shield. And we did a couple applications of that, and then inoculated with mycorrhizae, VAM, and a couple other products, and worked like a charm. It was a solid 3-4 years before we had to use trichoderma again. But we never were able to get all the roots out of the ground. It's impossible.
You do have to be careful. A trichoderma, if you do overdose, it will wipe out a lot of your other beneficial mycorrhizae.
Oh yeah, it's kind of a wiping slate clean.
That's why
it's good. It's a good nuclear weapon if you're kind of fucked though.
Yeah.
In the van, we don't include mycorrhizae. We do include mycorrhizae. We don't include trichoderma. And the reason it is because it is such a powerful microbe that it will just consume the rest of the others in the packaging, we think. So we just, if you want to use it, you can. There are places for it. But we don't have it in the van.
Yeah, and I have a little bit more about VAM too. And so with a lot of there can be criticism about, like, okay, well, why are you using so many different types? And so with endomycorrhizal fungi, they're finding in these studies that they form different relationships with different species based on what kind of stressors your plant is having. So if your plant is having drought stress, it's more likely to have send out the exudants that one certain species likes more than another. And so we have this cocktail of different species in the hopes that, no matter what's going on, if your plant can form an endomycorrhizal relationship, that we have something in this mix that will build that relationship. And then oh man, I had something else about endomycorrhizal fungi, but I totally forgot. So
they'll work synergistically together too, and trade minerals and trade different things that they need. They work synergistically as a group much better than the individuals. There was originally thought that there was only one species that colonizes cannabis, and then I know Dr. Efron, who we've had Efron Kazari, so we've had on the show quite a bit. He's often talked about how they've documented quite a few different species on cannabis. It's not quite the way that we used to think it was. So by having these different ones together, they'll colonize that, but also your cover crops and things, and exchange, almost like a stock exchange, trade different nutrients and minerals and things that they need. So it's never really good to have just one species. You want to have that diversity the same way that you do with your microbes.
Yeah.
But for us too, we deal with a lot of different kinds of crop producers too. So we want to have a balance for the different species for different crops as well.
It works for everybody.
But is that the doctor? Is that the guy? I don't know if it's the same guy, but there's a group from Israel that's doing some cool mycorrhizae with cannabis. And
It's actually based in Oregon, not super far from you guys.
no, that's the guy. No, that's the guy. That's the guy. We know him. No, I don't deal with him, but I think
great.
Josh has dealt with him, right?
Yeah.
The Mycos guy, the mycorrhizae guy. Yeah. Yeah, no, cool. Never mind.
That's cool.
I was like, that sounded familiar. I knew that was familiar, and I was like, now it's the dots,
I found with growing many different types of cannabis, having several, at least several different types of mycorrhizae in the blend is nothing but beneficial. I personally, with what the mix I use VAM along with a water soluble mycorrhizae and a nitrogen fixing bacteria as my root inoculant every time I transplant. I try to pick different types of mycorrhizae that either enhance the stuff that's already in VAM or different species that are all together. It just depends on the effect that I'm going for, and it depends on the root growth that I want to get. If I'm indoors in pots, I usually don't use a mix like that. I usually use just a simple VAM and maybe a little bit of nitrogen fixing bacteria, and that's about it. Because if I use too much, I usually get anywhere from 2 to 2.5 weeks out of each transplant. When I go from my living soil, from my 3x3 pot into my 1 gallon pot, and then from there into my 5 gallon, and then my 5 gallon into my 10, and then I'm finished with my 8-week cycle. But each one of those transplants, I need to take about 2.5 weeks. And if I use too much mycorrhizae and use too many root stimulators, then I burn out on my pot and I end up getting root bound in a week and a half. And I need it to take 2.5 weeks. I got everything planned out to where, if that totally interrupts my cycle, I can't have that. I like to have it root bound in about that 2-week cycle, and then get it in, just as just about to take a little bit north on me, and that seems to make it jump into the container, especially with hot soil. Otherwise the roots tend to dance around the top of it instead of going deep down into it, which is another reason why right after I use my VAM, which has some humic acid in it, I like to use either Cyto Plus or VAM to help feed that bacteria that just got and that fungus that just got put in the soil. That's how it was designed, is those products are going to feed the mycorrhizae that you put in your soil or is already there. So every time you use that, you should see a explosion of growth, not only on your plant but in your roots.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I think you meant to say TM7, not VAM on that.
Yeah, TM7. Yeah, TM7 with the VAM.
Yeah, so TM7 or Cytoplus both have the same micronutrients that'll feed both your plant as well as the concept is the TM7. So it stands for trace mineral 7, and those are the 7 essential trace minerals for microbial growth in the soil. And that's that's why it does that, and that's kind of how it was originally came. And then it was chelated with the humic acid. It's kind of why it made it a unique BioAg thing, is because we have the humic chelated micronutrients.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Great product too. I've used it a lot in aquaponics and living soil, and it certainly is one of the best, if not the best, micronutrient blend that's out there.
I've been very curious about that in aquaponics. It was my friend. I always wanted him to try it in aquaponics, but I'm not sure if he ever did. But
we have friends that do planted aquariums and actually put it in the gravel as part of their nutrient release. Yeah,
it's very cool.
Oh yeah,
that's very cool. I did not. Yeah, that's the first I'm hearing about that. That's very cool. I like that.
My thing is a general statement. Doesn't matter whose products, whether it's ours or anyone else. Read the back of read the label, read the ingredients, figure out what's in it. Don't know what you're buying.
Yeah, read that heavy metal test. That's one of the unique things about BioAg is we go out of our way to keep those heavy metals as low as humanly possible. Very low amounts of arsenic, very low amounts of cadmium, very low amounts of, the stuff you don't want in your plant. Our products are designed to help keep that stuff out of your plant, not accumulated in there. And that's the difference between you being responsible and using a responsible sourced humate versus something that's cheap, and sourced from a third world country.
And again, especially for people that are doing, aquaponics on a bigger scale, getting them in the powdered forms that you guys offer, especially the Cyto Plus and some of the other things, really do help for dosing those bigger systems and people that are, maybe a little less familiar with doing stuff at scale. So they're a great line of products. And do you guys, I guess before we wrap up, do you guys want to touch a little bit on all the different R&D? Because you guys really do a lot of the science and testing, and a lot more than a lot of the other companies out there that just kind of whip up formulas and get stuff out the door. Do you guys want to touch on that maybe to in closing?
Yeah, sure. I'll start and then pass to Alex. I was actually supposed to, when I first got hired, I was supposed to go on the road and start selling BioSupersil and the aminos, and then COVID happened. So I ended up getting stuck in the greenhouse killing plants all summer, which was kind of fun. I hadn't really done a lot of greenhouse work, and I certainly hadn't got to work in a lab coat and kill plants. So that was definitely a great little adventure there. And we got to come up with some neat formulas and do some cool things. But we saw a lot of real interesting stuff, and we've got a lot of really cool products that are coming down the road too. And a lot of biologicals, a lot of more of the regenerative farming stuff. It's just all things in good time. We don't want to rush anything out. We're not going to bring anything out to the market that isn't to our standard. So we're going to take our time and make sure that everything that we bring out is dialed in as humanly possible. And I think we have with all the new products we've introduced over the last year and a half. Alex?
Yeah. I'm gonna be real quick because Eric runs. He's the one who is doing a lot of the research in the ag industry. But just from my experience with working with him, we did some really cool grape experiments. We did some really cool just corn trials. And like I said, we're doing some turf experiments with OSU this year. And it's just coming. I did a lot of research, with OSU, like as a research technician. And so seeing a company, do this kind of like actual research where it's like, it can be peer reviewed, it can be repeated. It's like, I'm stoked on it, and so Eric really can delve into that because he's the mastermind. He's the master student, kind of behind a lot of the ag research.
So basically, so that's the thing, is we do a lot of research on a lot of different crop products. Crop production types. And so our main three areas that BioAg focuses on is indoor ag, which is mainly cannabis, CEA, which is controlled environment ag, which is food production hydroponically,
and ornamentals.
And ornamentals, so flowers, stuff like that, the turf and ornamental industry, and then traditional ag. And so in traditional ag, we're obviously, our products are organic, so we focus on organic ag, but we do focus on all agriculture because our products fit both into conventional and organic. So my background, before I came to BioAg, I worked for a company that developed biopesticides. So we were a pesticide manufacturer, and I did field research on herbicides and insecticides, organic herbicides, insecticides, fungicides in tree fruits. And so when I was brought on to BioAg, the goal was to because we had a lot of great products, the Humics and Fulvics. I was brought on to kind of get more field research in the ag side of it. And then Josh and then another guy we have are working on the research in the indoor ag side of it. And then we do some CEA, but the problem is we don't have the facility to do that here. So that we kind of outsource a little bit. And so those are all the actual efficacy field crop production trials that we do are in those three sectors. And then we do R&D on the manufacturing side as well. So we have our own humic and fulvic lab, so we can test our own humic and fulvic acid products. So we do a lot of formulation, a lot of batch testing, a lot of that kind of stuff as well. We have a whole a research guy who just covers that side completely, named JC, and he kicks butt. But he does all the humic testing and the fulvic testing and the silicon testing now, all that kind of stuff. And that's more the R&D, product development side. But then I handle the field trials. And so this year we do a lot of in-house trials and a lot of outsourced trials. The in-house trials, we do soil applied trials with our products and foliar applied trials with our products on tree fruits. We do some hops because that's a crop around us. We do corn trials because that's a big market for us, organic corn. We have done hemp trials in the past. We do cannabis trials, marijuana, recreational farms, and medical farms. But basically what we do is we do that. And then we also do a lot of partnerships. So we're based in Independence, which is by Oregon State University. So Alex mentioned that we're doing stuff with the turf department there. But the USDA is also there for a bunch of different crops. And so we're doing, this year we have trials aligned for hops. So we have some bio-supercil trials actually to test on botrytis and powdery mildew, an official trial. So we're doing greenhouse trials with USDA. We're doing turf trials with OSU. We're doing, what else are we doing? The seed trials. So the seed lab trials, that's in the Oregon State Seed Lab. We're doing third-party trials with the group that does CEA for tomatoes with the fulvics and humics, and just kind of dialing in those rates with the new products and the new, because we're kind of tweaking the products a little bit to improve them. We're always continuously improving our products. And so that's what we spend a significant amount of our budget on research, because we feel as a company, you can't just be out there doing marketing and selling products. You have to also be doing the data collection and the research behind it to know how those products work for different growers. You don't want to just, we want to be able to provide as much of that as we can, which obviously over time it'll accumulate. And then we've also got Dr. Buck, so he wasn't able to come on board, but his background's in controlled environment ag, and he kind of runs all those research trials. And so, but yeah, so we're cranking, and it's been a history of that. So the company started with Bob, and when Bob started, he was doing ag trials and indoor ag trials, and he comes from an ag background, but that's how he developed the full power originally, and he developed the full humics originally, was by doing field research tests, doing, okay, we're going to try 2 pounds of this or 3 pounds of this. We're going to have 6 different sources of humic and try the different rates on. And he was in Southern Idaho when he first started doing ag, and then did California, and then ended up in Hawaii. So it was a very, different crops, different trials, different rates. And that's how he dialed in the full power, which in itself is such a phenomenal, well-known, good product that kind of just attributes to all the research and data he did with that product, to make it successful.
He spent years doing the tweaking on full power. It wasn't, it was not an overnight success. It took him, 10 plus years of different formulations and different ways of doing it before he came up with it. And, the product that he first brought to me was, not nearly as strong or concentrated as what we have today, and not nearly as active as what we have going. His formula has gotten nothing but better with time. And yeah.
And then same with all of them. So the TM7, the Cyto Plus, the full humics, full power, those were all kind of the same way. It was through the research and development. And that's where we've come to these new amino acids the same way as through the research. And as we come out with new stuff, because we're going to continuously, we want to keep growing in the biostimulant world and providing good, clean products. We're just going to continuously doing the research before we come out with the products. So.
And you touched on something also as well in episode 84, the first time we had Dr. Faust on the show. He really kind of went through in detail the differences between the different types of humic acids that are sold on the market and the different grading methods and all that stuff. So if you're looking to learn a little bit more on that, I know you kind of touched on that earlier, go back and listen to episode 84 of the podcast. And he does a great 30 or 40 minute break that topic in particular. So if you want to learn more on that.
the different humics it's intense, and then just the registration and legislation and how they're regarded by different countries. It's awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us, guys. I know it's getting a little bit late there, and I don't want to keep you guys all evening, but it was certainly a pleasure having you all on the show. And thank you so much for joining us. Do you guys want to kind of mention how people can find more about you on the way out, or should they just reach you through BioAg there? Do you guys have different Instagrams or anything, or are they all through the main one?
Yeah, so Josh has an Instagram, right? I think,
Yeah.
and then Alex does, and I do. So yeah, we've got the Instagrams. But for questions about products, on just bioag.com, that's got contact info for us. The email addresses are on there for any of that. But then for the Instagram, I'm fruit science. So just like apple fruit science. That's mine.
I don't really use Instagram all that much, so just follow the main BioAg, and I try to be on the Friday freebies and like different stuff on there, talking about ecological or like regenerative stuff. So just follow that one. But yeah, I really don't post to Instagram too much.
Yeah, I was told I need an Instagram, so I got an Instagram. I post pictures of pot on there sometimes, but that's about it. I'm on the BioAg one all the time with the Friday freebies along with Alex, and yeah, I think it's just my name, Josh Hedberg, on Instagram.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us today, guys. Again, for those of you guys that are trying to check them out, you can find them over at the_OG_BioAg on Instagram, or bioag.com, BIOAG.com. If you want to find more about their products, they do have kind of absolutely the best of their type of products. Like I said, I've been using a lot of their products for 5 or more years and regularly recommend them to people for commercial ops. So definitely check them out, and certainly happy to have their team on the show today.
Yeah. Thanks for having us, Steven. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great talking with you.
We had a blast.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too, man. Peace.
That was a really great time having them all on today, and we certainly always love having it on. I think this is the 4th time that we've had BioAg team members on the show between the Dr. Faust and the team today. So certainly a lot of fun. And how's it going, Wes? We haven't seen you in a little while.
Yeah, man, good. I've just been working, chilling, just spending a lot of time in my garden, getting booting up my garden. Just been making a lot of clones, and just
What
catching up on
cultivars are you growing at the moment?
Let's see. I got some Mac and Jack. I got some G13 hash plant. It's just a BX. It's not an original cut or anything, but it seems pretty good. I got some curing, and that's coming around, so I'm excited about that. I got some grandpa stash from Ethos. I got a bunch of Ethos going right now. Yeah, a bunch of stuff. How about yourself? What do you got going on the go?
Right now, I'm just finished clearing out my room from the last run, so we'll be doing some. I don't know. I have a fuck ton of autos sitting around, and I was thinking maybe just doing like one auto seed of each of the different ones and seeing what I get just for fun, just because I don't do autos very often, and I kind of have the ability to do that right now with the room, and I don't have a ton of space, so I think that might be fun here for a bit. We'll see. I haven't quite decided on what we're going to do next yet. I kind of am waiting to find out more on my schedule come July. So, and then I think we'll make a decision around that. But hopefully back in July, we'll have edibles back in the main commercial production in Oklahoma. So working on that and doing some cool new products that I can't reveal yet, but we got some cool new shit that we're cooking up that I think people are really going to like. And they're certainly different than anything else that's out there right now.
Cool.
So that'll be a lot of fun. And yeah, just mainly working on that. And then I've also been working on, I have a new pest control class. So we're doing a complete revamp of the pest control. Nothing there's anything wrong with it, but I added a hell of a lot more. Just the pest control class is over 130 slides. So that'll be a whole, extended version of what we already have. And we're also going to re-release that in a slightly modified version for all aquaponic production, so and living soil. So it'll be strictly around mostly biocontrols and beneficial insects for controlling just about anything that you can run into in an aquaponic or a living soils type system. And we'll be offering that as a separate class. And then I have a mineral and microbe class that we're going to be having. And then we'll have an aquaponics 101 last. So kind of working on those. I have the slide decks completely done for the pest control class. I'm working on the mineral class and the other class right currently, but working on getting those filmed and out. And then that'll also be available to anyone that currently owns the cannabis class. Once we launch it, that will no longer be happening. So if you want to get both of those classes, sign up over at apmjclass.com and you'll get both access to both full versions. Definitely check that out.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then if anyone is also interested, I will be speaking at Myceliate, the festival. It's going to be really awesome out in Wilkinson, Washington. So that'll be a lot of fun. I'll be there. Molly from Molly's Bottle Shop, Dustin Powers of Future 4200. We have Chris Trump, Cass Posey. She was on the show a week or two ago. Matt Powers, really big in regenerative farming, and Catherine Seidman, and a whole bunch of other awesome people will be out there. So definitely be sure to check that out. It's going to be a really, really good time, and definitely excited about that.
Awesome.
And then also last weekend in July, in fact, they're going to be our guests next week. I will have what did I do? Hold on, broke my thing here. 1 second. No, what happened? Dope. I hit the wrong button. We will have James from the Organic Cultivators class will be with us. James Brower will be with us next week. Ooh, I hit the wrong button. I'm sorry, guys. Here we go. Now I got recombobulated from being discombobulated. Organiccultivators.net. If you want to check out the website, we have a wonderful thing. Patrick King, Wendy Kornberg, Chris Trump, Ben Acadia, Kevin Jodry, myself, Michael Wolf, and a couple of other people will be out there. Dan Kittredge, Susan Maywright Evans, Jana Beckerman, who's kind of the plant pathologist version of Suzanne, will be out there as well. So that's going to be awesome. And yeah, definitely check that out. It's in here, Oklahoma City, last weekend in July, for those that are wanting to get access to that as well. Again, we do have the Aquaponic Cannabis class over apmjclass.com. Marty and I have put a lot of time into that, so be sure to check that out if you're interested in a more longer format aquaponic cannabis education. And yeah, thanks everybody for watching the show. We will be back again on, we're going to try and do a show on Tuesday. I do have some stuff going on, so we might not do a show on Tuesday, but we're going to try. And then we have a pretty cool guest next week for next Thursday. We're going to save for you guys to find out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Wes, how do they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at WESING, all one word. And yeah, give me a follow. I'll follow you back, man.
All right. And you can find me at apmjclass.com or at Growing with Fishes podcast or Potent Ponics on your favorite podcast app, SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, all the things. And we'll catch you guys again on Tuesday at 7:30 Pacific. Take it easy.